So it's been a really good week of writing, I think, ultimately. It's the kind of thing where I can pick it apart, I can find fault. But at the end of the day, I'm keeping with the core elements of my practice, writing every day, reading 2 short stories a day. And those are the things that are going to get me to the finish line. The finish line being become a published fiction writer. If it's your first time here, my name's Asa Merritt. My background's in dramatic writing, screenwriting. I wrote 6 sermons starring Stephanie Shu for Audible. Now I'm writing fiction for the first time. That's the project of this channel. Welcome. And on these weekly videos, we go through 3 things. Writing updates. Today I'm going to tell you about that horror novella that I've been working on. Reading updates. We're going to talk about Ted Chiang and Exhalation, this fabulous collection that I'm working my way through, and always one piece of writing advice, a writing tip. And for that today, we're going to talk about writing from a POV. There's a story in here told from the point of view of a parrot, and it's rather good. I'm glad you're here. So on the writing update front, I think that I can say that things are moving forward. I got another rejection for that story that I have out in the mix, and I have come back to this horror novella. And just to sort of spend a brief second on kind of the challenge here of really becoming the kind of writer I want to be, I think that I had this real kind of moment of breakthrough this morning when I was working on the project. And by working, I mean kind of not working. I was stuck. I'd gotten up, I had done my thing, my phone was off, the conditions for work were great, but I was just staring at the screen literally for 20 minutes, trying. And then 30 minutes, and I'm running out of time. I only have an hour and a half before I have to get back to the house and get my kid to school. And this is my little precious time to write before the sun is up. And finally I started writing, and I only had 10 minutes, but I wrote a little bit, and it was such a big win because it's okay, that's the thing that is keeping you back, that block. Because once I was on the other side of the block, it came, and I only had 10 minutes, but for 10 minutes, good sentences happened. And it was just such an affirmation that's once I build the systems for good creative work, build those routines, then I am going to get to where I want to be. If you continue to write 1 sentence a day, if you continue to read 2 stories a day, you will succeed. Just keep going. And it feels very good. So also on the writing front, today I wrote a flash fiction piece about the weird Wild West fiction. That was during our live workshop that we did on the channel about weird Wild West fiction. Check that out. It was super fun. Subscribe if you're not subscribed to this channel. We're doing those workshops on Friday. As for reading this week, it was a little bit of everything. I have this stack of books here. These are all books that in one way or another I looked at this week. In some ways, the reading this week was to make house calls at old friends, to see how they are, to hear their voice, see how they're doing. That's why I opened up The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This book changed my life. I love this book. And Shirley Jackson's such a master. I did finish Dark Tales, her collection of short stories this week. Those are all scary-ish stories. Those I hadn't read before. Those were new, and a lot of winners in there. This, of course, I had read, but just had to check out again. Samantha, if you know me, you know how big a deal this writer is in my life right now, Samantha Schweblin. And opened up her stories again today, and I just have to learn Spanish is the bottom line. I've talked about that before, so that I can really read these stories the way they ought to be read. But apart from that, I did dip into these this week just to kind of get her weirdness in the bones. There's such courage in these stories, I think, or at least that's kind of how I am experiencing them from a writer's point of view, where the details that she chooses to emphasize, the focus of her attention, what parts of the story matter. There's such a singular vision to her reality. And it's not my vision. I'm trying to figure out my vision, but the singularness of this is just so inspiring. And it's just, you're walking into a world that's so specific, and it's one person's set of eyes. And it's this is, I feel inside this person, or no, not necessarily the writer or whatever, but there's just, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words, as you can see And that's how her fiction makes me feel. Whereas Stephen King, this is a world that feels familiar in a way that's both comforting and also like, how can I get more specific? I returned to The Mist this week because formal considerations, this is a novella roughly the same length that my novella is going to be. Similarly, a family drama. Stephen King's so good on that front. Just to put this book on the camera, playing the short game, all you writers out there, this is a great book. It's super useful. It's giving me lots of great advice about how to write a cover letter. And then the last book I want to talk about this week is Exhalation by Ted Chiang. And this collection of stories, I'm not really a sci-fi reader, or certainly would not identify as someone who seeks that kind of story out. But it's very easy to see why this writer is so popular reading these stories. They're so stripped down. They're so simple. The conceit of whatever the speculative conceit is so simple, and then he explores that to its logical end. And that's what happens in this story that I read over lunch today that I want to talk about and use as an opportunity to talk about point of view. Because, as you know, I would be remiss to leave you without a writing tip, as I always say on this show. And the story I want to talk about today is called The Great Silence. And this story is told through the point of view of a parrot. And essentially what he is saying, this imagined parrot, is that parrots are much closer to humans than extraterrestrials, probably. Parrots communicate through language. They have learned all these things that humans have taught them. They're so close. There's so much that can pass between them, but instead the human preoccupation in terms of connecting with the other, so much of it is given to space. And it's this lovely little heartbreaking tale about how this particular species of parrot that lives in the rainforests of Puerto Rico is going extinct, and it is this sort of elegy to what could have been. The parrot is saying, we could have talked, y'all. We could have connected, but instead you had your eyes towards space. And even so, it redeems the human race in the course of this story, or at the very least gives it the benefit of a doubt or a silver lining. And humans create such beautiful myths. What imaginations they have. Perhaps that's why their aspirations are so immense. Look at Arecibo. Any species who could build such a thing must have greatness within them. Arecibo, that's their kind of device that they're trying to talk to the aliens with, the extraterrestrials. Anyway, a really lovely little story, a simultaneous takedown and paean to the human race in terms of their capacity for awe, their inability to see what's in front of them. I recommend it. You know, it's very much like the kind of story that leaves you with an idea more than an emotional experience. And usually I want both. But in this particular case, the elegance, the concision, the story is very short. This guy's a pro. This guy's a pro. That's all for next week. Thank you for being here.